sit on the throne of Israel.
Excellent. Okay, and then just a few, depending on how far you want to go with it, how do you know for a fact that you're of the line of David or, the line of Judah?
Excellent. This is, in particularly, is why I recommend that whomever it is that is actually looking to debate me, actually look through my videos first, because I've placed all the evidence that I have forward, laced throughout there, so that you can, of course, study it, try to dissect it, not just via audio, but visually as well. In particularly, right now at the moment, but in particularly, there is a holding for quite a while now that when the Mashiachk comes, radio channels will be on a different frequency. This has been taught by Yitzhak Ginsburg, a sage that lives in Israel right now. And ultimately, this aligns in this day and age, which I have throughout my videos. Excuse me one moment. My sweetheart dog, of course, doesn't know that we're speaking and he's going through it. Just a moment.
What's good, bro?
Yes, I was saying in particularly, this aligns with different scientific breakthroughs, which literally have come to surface in this day and age, which ultimately it would be best if you actually look through my videos than me just out of nowhere start basically rattling off some things to you that you haven't been focused on or studying in the moment and just coming out of left field, so to speak. So I definitely would recommend that you look through those first, just to get a...
Fairly familiar. So your concept is that your body has been rejuvenated through taking on a specific diet, correct?
It's not just rejuvenated. For example, there are one of the holdings that this angel holds is that when the Mashiachk comes, radio channels are going to be on a different vibration. Now, there are different ways that angels can interpret that, such as, hey, how do you know someone's not just talking about like a messianic age, being as that you could say what Solar is doing today is radio channels being on a different frequency, a different level. That when this came out with radio, people were actually having to tune into a radio channel, and now it's like he has his own radio channel. That's one depth to something that someone can interpret in that way. However, it has been proven today that your DNA is actually a fractal antenna. And this is what I mean, that is one thing you just hearing me say this, it's another
I'm
thing.
familiar with your claim about the crystallization of the pineal gland and the different things that are in the DNA.
Okay.
I do a little research.
So,
I guess I'm more interested in, when we debate, I don't want to be chasing ghosts, right? So the biggest concern that I have is when you are saying these things, there's no real concrete proof, right? And so, for instance, you'll tell me what Yitzhak Ginsburg says. Who is he as an authoritative figure? What is his ideology? Which sounds like he would be of the Jewish persuasion. So then I got to find out if you're Jewish. Are you going off Kabbalah? Are we going off a gematria kind of conversation? Like, what are the different ways that you use to prove these? Because as of right now, everything that I watch is just you saying it. There's no way to combat it. So I don't want to go into a debate chasing something. We could just say, yes, I am. And then how do you concrete prove it? So that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you literally prove that it's you? And I don't want to have to watch a million videos. I want you to explain it, because in the debate, trust me, I'm going to make you explain it. So I need to know.
Now, first and foremost, the very fact that you are going through this scientific evidence, it would have to draw the question, how is it that I know this? It wasn't that someone said, hey, why don't you study this? Why don't you study that? The reason that I got to this proof, that the scientific evidence that I just put forward, was because I literally did it. And what I mean by literally did it is when I say that your DNA is a fractal antenna, literally, that is what it literally is. This is the scientific proof that I placed forward. You were talking about studying the videos which show the crystallization in the pineal gland. Now, literally, what was the point of them pointing that out? That our pineal gland looks pretty? No. When you go through those videos, it shows you very clearly that this activates the pineal gland, literally, to to function as a cell phone for those who are literally out there looking for, as you would place it, intelligent life. So when you ask me, how is this you? How does that pertain to you? You're literally hearing nobody else come out and state that they have come upon these literal scientific facts by them themselves doing it, literally. And one more time, I don't want to sporadically start talking about this line of evidence and then that line of evidence, because then that might come off as chasing goats, as you stated. But when it comes to aligning with these signs, to put it one way, that these angels such as Yitzhak have been looking for, who else are you seeing which aligns with this? It's one thing that someone such as, for example, Yaju or someone of that nature saying, hey, yeah, it's me, and it's just me, just like that. But when we are talking about me and specifically, oh yes, I am aligning with these foreshadows that they themselves have been awaiting for. If there's anyone else that aligns with it that you know of, being as it seems like you're out there actively looking for people to debate in this nature and this scene, I would like to hear of them, because I am the only one.
Okay, and then just a couple more questions. So for you then, what if I went through the whole process? Would I then be the Messiah?
Well, that's the thing. Would you in this moment be a schizo if you were doing that? Or do you know specifically that, hey, yeah, there are people out there that have this quote-unquote God helmet that Michael Persinger made up, that they're stating is now the breakthrough of quantum entanglement, that basically, hey, your cells can, via the photons that they operate and communicate with, which is all scientifically proven, are able to literally pick up these communications aligned with DNA being a fractal antenna to actually pick this up. You're not a schizo, correct?
Never been, never will be.
Neither will I. Neither will I, Angel. So when I'm saying that this is what how this happened, well, here's the thing. They never stated that when the Mashiachk, someone asked me specifically, what is it that you're bringing? So I'm not saying that others will not reach these levels or anything like that. But if there's anything in particular you want to go through and start to debate in regards to, hey, you stated this in particular, or you stated this in particular. These, excuse me, I'm not trying to get off track, and I'm also keeping one eye on my dog here at the same time. But
we're fine, brother. Real life happens. I'm prepping for a real estate meeting, so we good.
I appreciate that. And but in regards to anything in specifically, there's no one else that aligns with this. There's no one else that has come forward with this. It's not for no reason that it has been me.
But from your perspective, though, others could attain it.
But that doesn't mean that I was not the first one to bring this forward. This is
but the debate. Just so you know, the debate's not going to be.
If I may just finish this, anonymous. What are the things? No. You're perfect. You didn't know I wasn't finished yet. It's not your fault. I just wanted to say that. What is it? Or I wanted to ask, what are the things in particularly that were supposed to happen when the actual Christ comes? Things are supposed to better for us, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Like for example, brother, there's something called genetic load that you may have seen, that it's literally scientifically proven that the human genome has been degrading. And when you look into this, it's been done at a time frame that literally fits a literal atom via just, again, circa 6,000 years ago now. I'm not saying the earth itself is 6,000 years old, but us, Adam, humankind here, is 6,000 years old. And excuse me, not to get off in a whole other thing because you're not combating that. What my point is that if this genetic load, if this mutation were hundreds of thousands of years old, we wouldn't be here as a species. So along with these things getting better, it's not just reconstructing our genetic code, which, for example, there's an angel by the name of Elizabeth Blackburn, and she literally has proven that the diet, which you mentioned that you saw some on earlier, that diet was literally proven to affect our genetic code directly. It's no secret that food directly affects our genetic expressions. And she literally has proven that such a diet changed 500 genes in just 3 months, literally turning off genes that cause chronic disease and turning on those to prevent them. So of course, along with this coming, there is, for those that are rising along, because of course you have those skeptics that know better out there, and that is what it is. But of course, along with this coming is a betterment, literally. This is what was, in essence, written of in Micah when it states that they're awaiting one whose origins are of old and ancient ways. And for example, when you look into Jubilees, you will see that the first sacrifice was plant-based, done by Adam. And also, there's a sect you may have heard of called the Ebionites. They reject animal sacrifices and also kept the diet that I'm speaking of. So along with this coming is again the return of those old and ancient ways. It's reminiscent of what's written in Zephaniah, that there will be a return of a pure language. But if you'd like, I'll go through my material and we'll pick out specifically what you'd be most comfortable trying to attack in regards to why I'm exactly the Christ. Because I think...
Oh, no, I'm very comfortable with what you're saying right now. To go after it from a perspective of, are you the Christ? I just want to make sure you understand my line of questioning and my perspective, because maybe when we get to debate, you might switch up. And so I want to make sure you understand. I'm asking, are you the Christ? Not, and in my opinion, what's going to trip you up is if we get to the space where others can attain this, right? That's why I was asking you,
Christ consciousness.
Attain it, right? So Christ consciousness is different from you being the Christ. Now, would you agree with that?
Not at all. And the reason why is because whenever you look at any, for example, what may have been, speaking of the Ebionites in that time frame of example for 2,000 years ago, when you hear about different stories of what most people think of when they hear of one of the line of David, and particularly 2,000 years ago, you hear about angels elevating. This is why they followed him. You heard about them getting stronger, not just mentally, but different. You hear about things that maybe the Romans may have exaggerated, such as when it comes to healing the sick. But no, of course, in this time frame, our genetics work, in 2,000 years ago, our genetics work the same as they did now. And of course, angels found themselves bettering themselves, who actually followed whom people who referred to as Jesus, literally. So when someone says that, hey, just because others are able to attain these levels, that doesn't discredit it. This is what it means when angels say things such as, hey, you'll be able to do works that are better than me eventually, because you will also be able to build upon the foundations that we are laying right now.
Excellent. I love it all, brother. I love it all. I'm trying to make sure I just know exactly where you're coming from, so maybe a couple more questions if you don't mind.
You take your time, brother. I appreciate it.
And so, as it pertains to, I guess, your belief or fulfilling, so you obviously believe the first coming of Messiah, sure. What I believe.
Well, go ahead. I want to make sure that I'll remember what I was gonna say. Please keep going.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, because I said something that you definitely want to clear up, so that way I know the next space to go to.
But I don't want you to forget what you were gonna say, just in case. I won't forget.
Okay. Well, what if you believe in the coming of the first Messiah? I want to understand how you separate which prophecies he fulfilled, and then which ones were prophesied the coming of yourself. Because it sounds like there could be some major controversy as to the verses that you would say pertain to you, and others would say were accomplished by Messiah Yeshua.
Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned what you did, just so I get a further understanding of course, where your grasp right now. Earlier, I mentioned, for example, that there was an acronym today of the word Adam, which from Adam to David to Mashiachk. And the reason why I brought that up is because there was always a line of Christ since Adam, which is why I appreciate when you mention, hey, are you meaning like Christ consciousness? Because of course, technically, Adam was the first of us all. Adam was technically the king of the world in so many ways. And the thing is,
come out. One more quick question. I'm sorry. So do you believe Adam was the first man ever created?
Yes, we just had a debate on that. I and KOT.
KOT. I gotta go watch that. Okay. Excellent.
The thing is, I'm actually going to do a review on it, and I'll actually show the premise that I had. There was just some technical difficulties where they didn't show the premise. So honestly, you would be better fitted waiting until I post it. Otherwise, you'll miss the information I placed on it, because via the technical difficulty, like for example, the angel, she really wasn't able to see at all any of what I was putting out. Like she was looking for citations, which of course I can understand, which I had listed out, but she just simply wasn't able to see it. And I don't want you, of course, to turn it on and be like, oh, what is this? Because it would just be circular reasoning right back to, of course, just when you mentioned now, hey, I understand that you're saying this. What proof do we have that it is actually reality?
Yeah, that was my fault, because I was trying to share the screen. I thought it was sharing. Because I can't really, when you share the entire screen, you can't really see it. So that was my fault.
Everything went perfectly fine. And like I said before, thank you very much. Everything went perfectly fine. In fact, when you called me, I'm actually finishing a review of the conversation you had with Chris. I'm gonna like this, but I did tell you he wasn't gonna give you the recording of that call. But Angel, excuse me, to come back, what I was gonna say, brother, is you would be better off waiting until I post it so you're actually able to see it. But what I was gonna say was that when you mentioned the first coming, that there was always a line of Christ. You remember, since David, then Solomon, then Rehoboam was the line of Christ. Even though Solomon had brothers, even though Rehoboam had brothers, they were still the specific line of Christ, even coming from David, still his brothers. So what I'm stating specifically is, like, for example, Jeremiah 33:17. This might be a good contention for debate for you, because I just got finished. I'm about to do a review on it. They don't know how badly they've been crushed, but some angels that are Torah only is what they call themselves, and basically they challenge those to try to show basically what was a romanized Caesar Borgia in the Old Testament. And when they heard Jeremiah 33:17, that there will always be a man from the house of David to sit on the throne of Israel, what you may want to try to pick this up or not, because I've crushed them on it, is they started to ask me, oh, are you king right now? Do you rule right now? And I said, yes, I am king right now. And when I said I am king right now, they said, oh, that's where you fudged up, because it says there will always be a man from the house of David to sit on the throne of Israel. Now, I'm the one who pointed out, it says to sit on the throne of Israel while we were speaking. But then they tried to contend that if it says to sit, you're not the king right now, meaning, of course, anointings and things of this nature. However, when you keep reading, the next line states, and there will never lack a man from the Levitical priests to make sacrifice. Now, hold on now. Let's examine that for a moment. How do you become a Levitical priest? Here, there's only two ways anyone's going to come up with. One is to be born of the Zadokite line, be born of Levi. And two, of course, not only to have already that check mark, but to then be anointed. So then the question comes, of course, are these angels going to be anointing themselves? Of course not. So yes, indeed, when we go back, is it that I have to anoint myself, or do I fulfill these same exact check marks that those Levitical priests have to? Which is indeed a fact. They're not going to anoint themselves. They can't. And indeed, of course, they still have to be of that line of Levi. So they don't know just how badly they messed up yet, because their emotions got kind of in the way, which I can understand. You kind of like how you again you heard of me already, so of course you were already groundedly coming into this conversation. They were on a TikTok live, where the only reason that I even joined is because somebody started talking some junk in the chat, just childish stuff, and I was clearing something up, and then they basically asked, well, hold on, then what exactly are you? And I wasn't gonna lie, but for example, that clarity right there, that there will always be a man from the house of David, is why the reason why I bring that up is because when you mentioned, hey, the first coming, technically since Adam, this line has always been going on since Adam. And this is what it means in Exodus chapter 4, verse 22, where it states, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. That it was Israel, and specifically the children of Israel, and specifically, of course, Isaac before Jacob, Abraham before Isaac, and on down to Noah, and then back to Enoch, on the way down to Adam. They were literally preserving these historical records since the first Adam. As it says in Jubilees, when it comes to our calendar, and specifically that these days have been being kept track of in this way since Adam, literally. So if you like, let me see here. If you have a specific, perhaps email or YouTube, if you'd like, I can go to there's something in specifically that I'd like you to see, in case you may have not already. There's this kid in specifically that I debated with a few times over on, it doesn't matter his name, but and specifically we got into me being the Messiah. He himself was an atheist that, of course, is trying to discredit and lie about everything as soon as anything comes up or anything like that. So I actually had to show the actual evidence upon a review of the phone call, because he wasn't trying to have anyone listen to me for even a second, of course. As soon as he saw that, there's no way I'm going to make this kid look stupid, or whatever the fudge was on his mind. But if you want, I can send you over a link to that video with a timestamp in specifically, to see if there's anything there that you'd like to attack. Because other than that, there's, like, for example, like I stated earlier, who continues to fit this description? Like, if we have a handful of people who claim that they're the Messiah, who fits this? Who fits that? Who fits this? As we continue to identify what? Like with me, I'm going to be honest with you. It goes down to the detail that my father's name is even Joseph here today. And if I just said that by itself, like if I just walked around and said, hey, I'm the Messiah because my father's name is Joseph, I'm the son of Joseph, the line of David, literally. And this brings together how these angels state that in Ezekiel, it states that two sticks will come together, the house of David, the house of Joseph. And people were like, how the heck is that? And if I ran around stating this little shred of like evidence all by itself, I would get, of course, laughed out of the room. You know how many people are a son of Joseph now today, Randy? You know how many people have fathers named Joseph? But again, things such as, for example, if you look into, there's angels that I was looking to debate when it comes to Deuteronomy. And usually, when I mention Deuteronomy, I'm talking about the slave ship specifically. I'm talking about the slave ships, and specifically that it states you'll go to bondage again on ships. And there are many that try to, discredit that, hey, well, who is the king that it says that it says will go along with you, which it actually states in Zephaniah chapter 3, ultimately that is the Lord God itself that's king. But the reason why I bring that up, is to continue fitting these descriptions, such as I learned from my grandmother that my great-grandparents were in Holland, and specifically. And then when I looked into it a little further, you will see that Holland has a tradition that takes place by this calendar's count just around November, where, quote, St. Nicholas, or quote, Santa Claus is literally bringing slaves over on ships to Holland. Literally. So when we keep going down the line and checking off who fits this, who fits this, who fits this, I continue to check out. And I'm not just saying that to toot my own horn or anything like that. And that's why, excuse me, when you mention wine specifically, why I bring up, you know, the videos in particular, why I've lined this up, because just trying to like sporadically, oh, this or this or that, especially when not knowing where the other person may be at, of course, can add to or can lead to disconnect. Because there are some people, for example, that they're under the impression currently that, for example, Moses didn't make up Genesis, but originated writing it. And when you truly look into the history, this is why Aaron had to approach Pharaoh with Moses, as it states again, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And it was the Aaron, ultimately, those such as him, which were actually a part of keeping the history that was since Adam. This is why, again, when you look into Jubilees, it states Moses went up to the mountain, and then they started talking about, hey, these are the divisions of when you look into Jubilees, these are the divisions of the years, literally going into what our history actually has been. And excuse me, I'm trying not to carry on, especially when you were specific as to, no, hey, the line of Christ. So if I may just add this one more detail.
That's what I was really just trying to figure out. Like, where do you get your specific, like, does your father have the same paternal heritage or lineage connection? Do you guys have a record of this? Because now if you're talking about the record keepers, you know, I would assume then that there is some recordation that we can see.
Now, this is the thing, that when we actually look into the scriptures itself, it actually shows that there really shouldn't be any such thing expected when it states that literally to Abraham, your children will be slaves in a place that is not their own. They'll follow gods that aren't their own. Basically, of course, as it says to Noah as well, as God said to Noah as well, that your children won't keep the calendar going forward. They're going to fall astray when it comes to new moons and Sabbaths and all of this and all of that. So ultimately, it actually states there that these things would have been forgotten. That's why they've called them the lost tribes of Israel for so long, for that amount of time. So when it comes to records of that nature, in fact, it states in the scripture that wouldn't be happening like that, that ultimately we would be able to reflect back on this history as we're doing right now. And of course, it would still be, in essence, lining up in the way that it does. But for example, this is why what I'll simply do is I'll go to the video that I mentioned. I'll timestamp what it is that you specifically are looking at, and you tell me if that's something that you're interested in attacking. And
go ahead. Like after hearing it, I'm very comfortable with everything. I think you have a good command of your argument. We may see the scriptures a little differently. And I think that'll be great for the debate. I'm very interested in just debating you on your claim. Are you the prophesied Messiah to come of this time? And I would love to really, get into that. And you could even say the prophesied Davidic Messiah to come. So that way we know specifically that we're talking about one to come under the line of David. Are you good with that?
Well, let's do this, brother, if you'd like. And Solar, you're more than welcome to share my phone number with Anonymous. And, well, let's do this. Do you have an email? Or
yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me write that down. Just one moment. I'm ready.
We might... it's private, like a private out of the military, private, PRIVATE, Hebrew7@gmail.com.
Private Hebrew7@gmail.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. what I'll do, excuse me, would you like me to keep calling you anonymous?
Just call me Anon. Everybody calls me Anon.
Anon.
Yeah.
Okay. Anon, I'll send this over, and I'll timestamp it in specifically. And again, just so I know, so I don't send you anything repetitively. I know you mentioned that you looked into the crystallization of the pineal gland. And excuse me, if I may ask, was there anything in particular where just so to have your, excuse me, objective opinion when you saw that? And I know that you may have been doing other things at the same, or whatever the case may be. When you saw that, was there anything there that you felt didn't align, was not concise, was not clear?
Not at all. I'm actually familiar. I was familiar with it before the video, or that, what you shared. So my contention is not on the radio transmitting frequencies, or even the ability of DNA, the things that are embedded in the genetic code, the genome, or the pineal gland, right?
Particularly in Christ.
No, not even that. I don't have any. I don't have any technically any argument against it. I mean, if it comes up and I need to really attack it in a debate, then there are different ways that I probably would, which would specifically be still pertaining to you and how you prove it specifically to you, and then how it really then goes about in the scriptures. So what I would really like to see is kind of like a premise, not nothing huge, but just kind of from a scriptural standpoint, because that's really that's where the rubber's gonna meet the road, right? How we really iron out the scriptures, how we exegete the scriptures, and how we arrive at our conclusion, right? I'm more than proficient enough with the Human Genome Project, and with the different parts of the DNA, that if it turns into that, it'll be, it could be a great debate. But I'm always going to run you back to the scriptures. So
that'll be perfect. But I wanted to mention,
gracious enough. Go ahead.
And Aina, thank you very much. And speaking of gracious, you've been very patient and very, very gracious yourself in this conversation. And excuse me, as I know that you can kind of imagine when it's real, excuse me for this pace, being as that on one hand, I'm being mindful that I don't know how much time you have, especially when you told me you're also trying to prep for something when it comes to what you're doing currently. And
okay, man, it's my assistance. They'll wait for me. So if we need to go another hour, they'll wait.
Well, I appreciate that. I was just going to state that, for example, like when you mentioned earlier, hey, but if this is something that we can all kind of strive to reach, there was a conversation not too long ago where I answered the phone and we're talking about debating, and Solar mentions, hey, are you ready to save the world? And on one hand, we can laugh about it just like this, but on the other hand, it's also dead serious that people have been stating that when Jesus comes, in essence, it will be to save the world. And when you mention the genome as you do, and when we mention genetic load, literally that it's a scientific fact that our genome is degrading, and that it's almost like something that's accepted as normal today, these cancers and these different chronic diseases, which again, if these were actually around at our beginning, we wouldn't be around today. So these things line up, of course, in regards to what it is that, in essence, I'm supposed to be doing. Like when I was talking to the brothers that I mentioned earlier, like they weren't specifically like, well, what are you supposed to do? And I know you kids are well aware of all the messianic prophecies and what's to be fulfilled. So I can appreciate you approaching this from the fact that, or from the point that, how do we know it's you though? So one more time, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll timestamp this specifically. I'll send it over, and of course I'll list it. Solar, you won't have to. I'll put out I'll put in my phone number in the email, brother. So of course, if you have any questions in particularly, then you just call me at that point, and we'll go through it, and we'll put together what it is that you would like to, of course, discuss.
Well, I think we have a topic, if you like the topic that I mentioned, which is, are you the promised Davidic Messiah to come? And I even go further, like Solar like to add, of this day and time, or of this day and age, like, are you the prophesied Davidic Messiah to come of this time period? That's really the debate that I would love to have.
For certain. Let's do it, of course. But what I'll do one more time, first, excuse me, to be clear, yes, I definitely accept that. I accept that debate. So just to be clear, that what I'll do when we get off the phone here, after I just take care of a few things, is I'll email you over what I was talking about, and we'll go from there. Is there anything in particularly, like, because in essence, I know that in speaking with you, I'm not going to have to attack that there is a Messiah to, like, anything like that. Specifically, it's just me and specifically being it.
Yeah, and like I was going to say, that's what I was going to say. You've been gracious enough to answer any of my questions. I'll sit here and stand in the pocket and answer anything you have about my ideology right now, so that way you can know what you're fighting against.
I appreciate that, brother. This is one thing I was wanting to mention, because along with, like, for example, when I was speaking, I know that you're not him, but this is just an example. For example, when me and Solar were having a conversation with Chris Harris, which you'll see, I'm about to put a review out on it now, in maybe a few days longest here, just very soon. But he has, well, and him being an atheist from the direction that he is, it may not just be that he actually believes this, but it may actually also be that he wants to, like, push this on me so badly, kind of to just keep this truth caged up, so to speak. But for example, Chris he comes at it from, I mentioned to him the Ebionites, which it sounded like you were familiar with. And the Ebionites, of course, were against Paul. And throughout our conversation, it's like Chris has been so accustomed to speaking with, in essence, like Romanized Christians, that he kept calling me a Christian. Like he even at one point called me a Christian devil. This is after I clarified that I do not hold to any of Paul's teachings. It was after I clarified this, but he was so stuck, and this is the only way that he knows, that he really wasn't adjusting to what actually was the case in front of him. And again, it may be a mix of things, like, his whole thing being to keep things suppressed, like just silly things, like saying the Dead Sea Scrolls were all in Greek, just weird things. But excuse me, like, for example, there's the holdings, like I stated before, that angels will say that Moses wrote Genesis, that Moses wrote the books before Exodus, before Leviticus, before Numbers, before that time period. There are angels that would state that Moses wrote them. And excuse me, the thing is that if you want to get into technicalities, if he ever copied any scripts of those books before his time, then in that way. But the books that I mentioned, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, those were the books written throughout his time period. Those are the ones that can be attributed to him specifically. Prior to that, he learned and preserved the history that was being preserved by those such as his brother. Literally, Aaron, this is why...
To let you know, I don't disagree with any of that. I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, how does Moses write about his own death, right? So,
I understand that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very, very comfortable with that. And then even if we go further, with the version that we have now, I would say this is then penned probably during the time of Ezra. And we know then because of that, we even have probably some redactions. This is why we don't have a complete understanding of the Book of Jubilees or the Book of Enoch as it pertains to our Torah right now. So I don't have any issue with any of that. I don't even have an issue with you standing on oral history or oral tradition, right? Like I said, I'm like a dog with a bone. And so, when it comes to these things, I'm going to hammer my point home about you being that Messiah, right? That's what it comes down to. I believe, just to let you know, I was in the military. I used to fight as well. I heard you was a boxer. I did like some cage fighting for a while. And I know what it does to your body, especially gaining, losing weight at that clip. And then once you stop, right, I'm very familiar with the different diets. I had to go through that as well. I also had to go through the issue of using the Torah to get my mind back in control, right? After being at war so many times. So I completely understand what you're saying about the transformative power when it comes to the application of Scripture, right? So those things, honestly, won't come into play. If you make them, and I feel like you make some good points, then I'll address them because it is a competition. But for me, I'm more about addressing the topic, right? Are you familiar with me debating in this league at all?
I haven't. I'll be sure to try to look it up. Of course, I'm sure it's under anonymous Hebrew.
It is, but it might be hard to find. You know, I haven't been active for like the last 3 or 4 years. But just so you know, go ahead.
Excuse me for, I don't mean to.
You're fine, brother. You're fine. Just like you told me, no need to apologize. Good dialogue. Go ahead.
Your debate's up on the channel though, so you can check them out on Sodaville.
Okay, that's good. I was going to ask. I was going to ask if you had a particular channel, or if I'm looking through Solar. So I'll definitely go look through Solar's channel though. Then if you don't have it.
Okay. So yeah, you can go check some of those out. I've probably never had anything close to this topic because honestly, nobody would ever wanted to challenge me on it. So I'm excited for the challenge. I do agree. You are as good as advertised, right? You do have a way that you go about proving it. And so, I'm just crazy enough to go ahead and put it to the test. So,
listen, I truly appreciate your words because honestly, I'm going to be very honest with you. There are, of course, ones to be expected that there are those that aren't so. This is why I continue to say thank you to Solar, and I don't need to be seen with his personal, the battles that he's facing. I know that God has placed it so that we all, of course, in our very own ways, are having to do whatever it is that we are having to. Like, for example, in the book of Isaiah, as you know, it states, you see without perceiving, hear without understanding. And I said that, interchange is hear without understanding, see without perceiving. And of course, later on in the book, it states, in essence, now you understand, now you see, which is in essence a reflection of when God was speaking to Moses, and Moses was stating, let me see your glory, let me see your glory. And God, and it described God in essence going past him, and that Moses was able to see in essence his coat. Exactly, which is in essence us being able to look back upon reflection and then seeing why things were. Like, for example, I was doing a video in many of the videos I've shared, that when it comes to the 6 days of creation, it sounds like chaos when you're just going through it. But then when you review it,
I think physics aligns with what you're saying about anything with the creation, just to let you know. I don't believe it's 6 days, I believe it's 6 ages. Right, not 6 literal 24-hour periods.
You're correct.
We're talking about different. Right, so now we know y'all means an age, and so we're talking about the different ages. This is the science behind it. I think you'll be surprised and refreshed about how I'm able to walk with you down any of these paths. Right.
I'll be honest with you. That was exactly my point, and even to be completely transparent with you. Even to be honest with you, it's not even in regards to your actual level, which sounds like it's very high, but your sincerity is what I appreciate, and why I brought it up to begin with it. That of course I know that, and Solar would know that in this field, of course, you can also deal with a lot of dishonesty and things like that, and it is very refreshing, to be honest with you, to truth. And so often truth is equated to water. So of course it is very much refreshing again, and why I continuously say thank you to Solar, because honestly it takes no matter how crazy this may have sounded to people on the forefront or anything like that, like what, oh my goodness, just like you stated earlier, that hey man, it's sounding like it's as good as advertised, like this is actually grounded, let's go forward, let's put it to the test, which is science, what's observable, testable, repeatable. But like for example, on this review that you'll see that I'm doing of Chris's conversation, first of all, I didn't know Chris was that funny. This is the only thing.
Chris is a funny dude, bro.
He's very funny. I have to keep in mind in perspective that he still wasn't trying to be funny. Like he was actually trying. Like he's
really who he is, right?
If he could crush me, he could, but. Because by the grace of God, he's not in a place where he's able to do anything of that with me. I can objectively laugh. Like, for example, he was telling Angel that when she hears the conversation with me and him, that she'll see that I'm homicidal, that she'll see hide your kid, like she doesn't understand things like this. Because if God tells me to put children on an altar, he goes on to say all these things where I'm laughing my butt off hearing him say these things. But and I address them all, of course, as you'll see. I'm laughing my butt off hearing him say these things, but at the same time, he actually wishes that people would actually think this about me. Is the sad part. He's funny as fudge, but and I saw it there, because I'll be honest with you, when I first saw him, I thought it was like this, like it was just distasteful. Like I saw him reference to girls as bats, and he put on some emo of basically an emoji head with a wig. Almost like, again, disrespecting women. And then on other hands, you'll hear him say that the Bible disrespects women, which, again, we can go through it, and that will be crushed from, again, prophetess, like he'll
get, of course,
Isaiah.
He'll be. So the thing with Chris is kind of like a shock josser right now. He'll come with information on the debate, so I don't want to discredit that. But as long as you understand where you're going and don't let him play with the wording of a debate fighter, and then understand that he's going to say one thing and bring something else in the debate, you'll be fine. So I don't really take half the stuff he says serious. I do want to say this, though. This is my normal cadence, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a very reasonable brother. On debate night, I'm much more turned up, and it is much more aggressive. So I don't want you to get into that space.
No, I appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that. And me and Solar spoke about that before I debated anyone. There was a time that I was speaking to Blue, Battleaxe, Akmalak, and Solar was being very forefront. He's like, Lindy, we're speaking like this, but they're going to try to do whatever they can. And I can appreciate that. But the thing is this, and it goes back to like what your experience with a fighter. Throughout the press conference, real fighters, they can laugh. They can talk. They can be reasonable. And then, of course, when it goes ding ding, of course, then we have to do what we have to do. But at the same time, again, there are things like, for example, as soon as real fighters like that as soon as you notice that how many of these quote boxing fights, how many of these quote cage fights end up with those real fighters, because they are real, hugging each other out of respect.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, like when I was speaking with Battleaxe and Blue, that I'm like, are you guys actually like believers? Because they got, I'm not gonna lie to you, they got cornered so hard that they started turning atheists on me. Like the things I was showing them some things. I was showing them some things in particularly, and then I hear Battleaxe start saying, "Oh, that's a coincidence." And I'm like, bro, it really sounds like I'm talking to you right now. Like they got into a point where they didn't want to lose so bad that they completely threw out what they stated they stood on to begin with. So as long as it is what it is, if someone deteriorates on me to that level, then I'm just gonna have to keep tearing you up. It's what I was mentioning to Solar. Like there are points where it's like, oh dang. I can't feel bad for having to, just as it states, the sword of the mouth. The first interview Solar and I had, we were speaking about that it states that when one comes, it'll be with the sword of the mouth. And this isn't just in Revelations, which some can state that even when you go through these, quote, romanized books, of course, there are shreds of truth. Because, of course, it comes from the original source. So you'll hear of sword of the mouth in Revelation, but it's also in the book of Isaiah that It sharpened me like an arrow. I am like the sword of my mouth. It goes particularly into that. And when you go into Micah, it'll literally state, or excuse me, Isaiah literally states, books literally state that Assyria will not be ruled by the sword of the mouth. Excuse me, that Assyria would not be ruled by a mortal sword, meaning, of course, the sword of the mouth, this truth that we're going forward with today. And again, it's on one hand, I get to those points where I don't want to behead these angels like this, but here to look at it from this perspective, even speaking objectively now, this is only me. There can be only one by the grace of God, just like there's one God. So of course, who would be non-expectant of whoever in the world not coming forward against it. It basically is, until this is proven true, me against the world, which is fine. You remember when it comes to, there was one more thing I was going to state, going back to the angels in Jeremiah 33:17. If you remember, David was anointed twice. And the thing is that when David was anointed the first time, technically Saul was still a king. So how many people, literally putting yourself in that time frame, would have been trying to laugh at David? And don't forget the battles that David had to go through with Saul, literally. And then not only that, but then there was literally the line of David. Everyone knew, hey, this is the son of David that we're going against when the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom split. So here we are able to see a snapshot of right before David was technically king to people, and right when there was a separation where people said, hey, no, you know what, you're not, you guys aren't king like that. So no matter what, it was still very much real life, just like you and I are speaking today. And only upon reflection are we able to see, oh, nope, this is the legitimate truth. Only upon
hindsight is 2020. I'm with you.
Like, for example, if I may just share this, we see in Leviticus that there's a specific practice in regards to purity after childbirth. That for a male child, that's 7 days and then 33 days, and for a female child, twice that. And when you look at the book of Jubilees, you see that was because of the time frames in which Adam and Eve entered the garden itself. So the reason
for the record, brother, you keep hearing zippers. I'm sorry. I'm getting ready to get on a flight here not too long, so I hope that's not I'm sorry.
Not at all, brother. As a matter of fact, I'll wrap this up here. I was just going to state that the reason why I bring that up, that just like in the book of Leviticus, that there's that practice of purity, which is a commemoration of the first two, Adam and Eve. When you look back at the reigns of David and Solomon, they mirror those exact numbers. When you look into Samuel and when you look into the Kings, you will see that David reigned over Judah for 7 years, and then all of Israel 33 years, which is an exact match of when you have a male child purify 7 days plus 33 days, which also, going further, for a female, it's twice that, coming out to 80 days, which is the combined reign of Solomon and David together. David reigned for 40 years, and then Solomon reigned for 40 years to come out to 80. Those numbers completely match what we have in Jubilees of Adam and Eve entering the garden, and also the commemoration upheld in Leviticus. And we're only able to see that.
Okay, one final point of understanding then, because I hear you talk about the New Testament as the romanized books. So then, kind of like a two-part question. Number one, where's most of your information coming from? And I'm assuming it's coming from the Tanakh, and maybe all of the extra biblical sources. Plus, I heard you talk about the betas. and things of that nature. So I want to know where the bulk of your information is going to be coming from, and then also how do you get to your understanding of Messiah Yeshua, if you don't deal with the New Testament scriptures?
Excellent. It would be because the New Testament scriptures were still building off of the Old Testament holdings, which, for example, to make this as clear as possible, when you look at the Ebionites against Paul, you will see in particularly that there is a version of Matthew in particular that the Ebionites are renowned to uphold, which simply excludes a virgin birth and also different dismissals of the law, which of course, for example, like salvation via acts, not just, hey, I followed this new, etc., etc. So when you look in the book of Luke, for example, brother, there's a genealogy there. And now the thing is, when you compare the book of Luke with Genesis and Chronicles, the genealogies don't match. In the book of Luke, after Arphaxad, it'll state that Arphaxad had a son, which was another Canaan, also named Canaan. And then it says in Luke that Canaan then had Selah. But when you look at Chronicles and when you look at Genesis, it goes from Arphaxad to Selah. And ultimately, those numbers, when you get to Jacob himself, come out to 22 generations since Adam, literally. And the reason why this is of importance is because in the book of Jubilees, it states that there were 22 acts of creation in particularly. And when you go down the list from the beginning to, of course, to humankind itself, it is listed out 22 acts of creation. It's also held in the Sefer Yetzirah that God created the universe using 22 letters and 10 numbers, the number 10 being the basis of gematria still used today. And
but in that space, then you're confirming the book of Luke rather than denying it.
Actually, brother, the thing is that I'm actually showing where the book of Luke has been corrupted, because they actually added somebody, this Canaan, this extra Canaan. He's not in Chronicles and he's not in Genesis, and he doesn't fit the beginning of Jubilees. It's looking like a complete Roman corruption. And to me, it's kind of no coincidence that they named him Canaan, being as almost to back up people wanting to call Israel the land of Canaan, which when you look into Jubilees, that land was promised to Shem. And Ham, it wasn't Ham in particularly, sons of Ham ultimately in different battles. And so,
right, and we understand that they stole it, and so that's the real curse. I'm very familiar with the book of Jubilees.
So this is why, brother, it sticks out to me that person that they added in between Arphaxad and Selah is named Canaan out of nowhere. The only thing that I believe that genealogy got correct was calling Adam a son of God, because of course Adam is a son of God, and that's why, when you mention Christ consciousness,
now we all have the power to be the sons of God.
I understand exactly what you were meaning there, but that's why when you ask me, hey, what about the New Testament? There are things in there that are true, and there are things in there that are Romanized mythology. And for example, that genealogy, which shows to be corrupted, it doesn't match. There's no Canaan after Arphaxad in Genesis. There's none in Chronicles. And ultimately, when you get into copies of Jubilees, you can see that they added them into copies of Jubilees as well, but they fudged up because of the fact that you completely contradicted the beginning of Jubilees, which literally states that there are 22 generations from Adam to Jacob, Israel, which highlights all the more what it means in Exodus chapter 4, verse 22, that Israel is my son, even my firstborn.
Got it. Okay, I'm with you.
Brother, I want to make sure that you don't misplace anything because of this conversation, though there's nothing outside of God. But what I'll do now is, let's finish this here, and I'll send you over the timestamps in the video that I was referring to, and you let me know if you feel that's sufficient to go forward and debate.
Outstanding. What days work for you for debates?
Let me see here. Usually, outside of I know that eventually we're gonna have to align it with the equinox. I'm gonna stop in a moment. But for example, I was just on a part with my review of Chris's phone call where he calls the pyramids specifically African. And the thing is that when you go back, you will see that the pyramids around the world, they fit literally being designed by the patriarchs biblically. Like, for example, in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 47, verse 1, you'll read of a flow of water coming out from under the temple in Ezekiel. And this seems like reading that's a very unique trait. Like, you look around the world, what temple has water flowing out from underneath it? Now, when you look at the pyramids around the world, they have this architectural trait of literally being built above a body of flowing water. Literally, this is in Giza, this is in Chichen Itza, this is in China, this is all over the world. This is in Bosnia. They are literally designed with a flow of water underneath them, just like is written in Ezekiel, which highlights all the more Genesis 11, verse 1, that all the world was of one language. And I was getting there in particularly because there's a castle pyramid in Chichen Itza, which everyone knows. They call it the calendar pyramid as well, because it represents a calendar of 364 days.
Have you ever been there?
I haven't been there myself yet, but
I have. I went on the tour.
That's so beautiful. I'm glad you saw that. Did you see the phenomena upon the equinox?
Yes. And so the dopest part is there's actually a small window at the top part of that pyramid that they would use to do exactly what you're talking about. And the actual language in their system is, when you look at it codified, it looks like a decimal system. I really got into a real good conversation with the tour guide about that. So,
please stop right there for just one moment. Excuse me. It's not to interrupt you, but to highlight all the more that, just as I mentioned, that gematria in itself literally is based off of the base 10 decimal system.
Yep.
Literally.
Yeah.
And not only that, but there's a scientist which just proved that our very genetic code is also in sync with that very base 10 decimal system, which brings up all the more. In fact, again, someone having to confront creation, as the Hebrew script is a triliteral root structure, and our genetic code sends the messages of the nucleotides in threes. 3 nucleotides make up a codon. So here we see a parallel between the Hebrew script being triliteral and our genetic code sending its messages in threes. And just like the Hebrew script, it has a mathematical structure based off of that decimal system that you just mentioned. Here, there's a scientist that just proved our very DNA is in sync with that very same decimal system. And what I was going to say about the calendar is that there's Mayan elders that highlight, that share, that those triangles that light up on the pyramid upon the equinox represent the 7 days of creation, which of course, as you know, is exclusive to Genesis, which further goes to prove all the more Genesis 11, verse 1.
Now, I'm going to tell you this. I'm good with all of that. But now I take a couple shots. Ain't none of that going to save you when we debate, brother.
I'm not depending on it. As at the end of the day, the only thing that I warn is, again, as I stated earlier, I'm going to try not to embarrass you too badly, because when it comes to this, I am the truth, and of course, time reveals all. But one thing that's
beautiful, but just real quick, this is the part that I do love, right? I see that you're going to stand on this clear. I want you to realize, though, that there's going to come a time where we do interact. And I will not be so kind as to let you keep going without answering certain questions. Because I'm going to make it clear there are certain questions that you haven't answered. and I'm assuming that when you send me the videos, and I'll get those answers specifically. But if they are not sufficient, right? Just so you know, if they are not sufficient, brother, I'm gonna beat that argument down, and I just want to say that so that way you understand. Like, I'm not playing a game when we come in there that evening, because in my opinion, just to be honest, as great as your spirit is, as humble as your spirit is, you have not proven in your claims by what you're saying by any stretch of the imagination. You've proven a very adequate and great knowledge of a lot of great teaching and deep and critical understanding about how humans should respond, right? But I'll just give you one thing, for instance. Just because you understand diets and how it affects the body, Dr. Sebi understood that, right? Just because you understand certain things, there are several people who have already learned these things and pre-taught these things. And there are people who have a multiple combination of all of these things. And so come that evening, it's going to get real tough. And I just say these things not to brag or boast. I think your spirit is so dope. I don't want you to come in surprised. That's all.
Listen, I appreciate that very much. And trust me, again, this is the same line that slayed Goliath. Don't you worry about that. But it's the truth. But I very much appreciate what you're stating. But there's a few things that I just want to make sure are clear. And one of them in particularly is that I want to make sure that if there's a question that you're wanting to ask me now that you didn't feel that I answered, please just repeat yourself, because it could have been that, of course, just simply in trying to explain what I am, or that it just turned out that way. If there's a specific question you feel that I didn't answer here, feel free to clarify. Or if you meant that you're waiting until the debate to do it, then you're more than welcome. But if you're meaning that you asked something here and I didn't address it specifically, please repeat it.
No, you addressed it. I just don't think you addressed it sufficiently. So, for instance, when I asked about the bloodline, or how do you trace the lineage, right? And I will say for the debate on how I really deal with that, right? But there's going to be a big problem with that, especially with your understanding of the lost tribes and that they wouldn't have a tribe, this, that, and the other. And so when we get into that, I'm going to want to see proof.
I'll be glad to address that. If I may, just to give you a little bit of a forerunning, if I understand you correctly, of how I'm going to approach this, is earlier, remember that we were mentioning that Solomon had brothers. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you remember that David called Solomon's mother over and told Solomon's mother. David called Solomon's mother over and told Solomon's mother that just as I promised you, your son will be the one who's king, though he had other sons. Now remember, when it comes to David himself, he had other brothers. There's holding that David was the seventh brother. This is a direct alignment with Ruth, ultimately, that it states that there are elders that told Naomi, when it came to Ruth, you have, in essence, more love than 7 sons. What happened to you is better than 7 sons. May the child that's being born here be better than 7 sons. And David was that 7th son. So if we went to David himself and stated, hey, prove that you are the one and not any brothers in front of you. And here we're talking about the son of course, Jesse. Here we're talking about the literal line of David, as you and I know. If we were to approach David and say, hey, tell us, how is it you and not any of your actual literal brothers? Here we're talking about the same thing, in essence, that ultimately we're able to look back upon reflection, like those years that I aligned with Jubilees and Leviticus, and then we're able to see the hand of God in regards to those numbers align with Leviticus.
But brother, this is technically a false equivalency, because the issue was not whether or not David was of the seed of Solomon. The issue was it him or his brother that was supposed to take succession, right? This is a literal argument. Because even when Samuel comes and finds them, he looks at all the Jesse's sons, says, like, none of y'all live. Then David comes. So when David has his son, right, and then they come after him, we also see some succession issues, right? But the issue, honestly, for David was never about, whether or not he was from the line of Jesse. They knew that he was anointed by Samuel. The issue was between he and Saul, to the point where David was so much in awe and so much in love with the body of Messiah, or with the body of Creator. And what I mean by that is just with the living out of the Torah, that he knew he didn't want to touch or kill Saul every time he could. So it's not technically accurate to convey that to you, because what we're talking about right now is, where is your actual showing of this? So when it comes to Messiah Yeshua, my argument would be, this is why you see the lineage in Matthew, and that's why many of us argue that there is no virgin birth, and definitely no immaculate conception. Instead, Matthew the daddy, Matthew the pappy, right? Because now you come through the proper lineage, which is proper Hebraic culture. And that's just a small explanation of how, where I would push this.
If I may, when you mentioned that it's a false association, is there anybody that you ever read that came from the house of Saul, outside of even Saul's son, who was friends with David? As you know, they were basically best friends. Even the son of Saul, who was friends with David, of course, as you know, they were best friends. And no need to go as deep as I was about to, but even his son didn't state for quite a while anything in regards to David being a king. It's very clear to see that there would be those who were with Saul since before David. They would be stating, what do you mean you are a king? That's why they went to war. So when you mention this is a false association, I'm really not seeing how that is the case, being as those
because, here's why. Great question. Here's why. When it comes to Saul and David, those are two different houses. Notice that I told you specifically the debate that I want to have. Are you the Davidic Messiah promised in the scriptures to come? I need to see, right? And so I'm saying that there needs to be something that you have to prove that you come from that line. Just simply saying that the genealogy is lost and that the proof of that is lost is not going to cut it in a debate, right?
Oh no, we got you.
One of the things that really, and I don't know if you read the book of Matthew, especially in its Arabic form, right? Like, the understanding was they knew who his father was, right? And so those that really followed him, including John, understood that was his cousin. He understood the connection from a bloodline perspective, right? At least according to the scriptures. Chris will tell you all of this is myth. I'm not a mythos. I'm not going to tell you it's myth. I actually go into the scriptures, I go into history, and I look at it, and I deal with it. So from my understanding, then, if you're promising to be the Messiah to come up with the Davidic lineage, there should be some proof, because the Messiah promised that we don't have a God that will leave us ignorant, right? Amos tells us he does nothing without teaching it to his prophets first. So I want to know who prophesied you and who affirmed you.
I understand what you're meaning, but my point, to be all the more clear, and please tell me if I'm misunderstanding you after I try to clarify a little more. I mentioned earlier that these fights, for example, between David and Solomon, if you and I were back then in that time frame, you would either be with Solomon if you were there in that time frame. And when I say you will either be, I know you know what I mean. I don't have to come up with an example. Exactly. Now, the thing is, there would be those that would be saying, just like you're saying to me, hey, you're just saying this. There would be those that would be saying that about Samuel. Hey, so you're saying that Samuel, you want me to believe that God just divinely touched Samuel and that Samuel walked in there and all of a sudden he's like, no, this is the chosen one. There were those that would be telling Samuel, where is your proof of this? Those are why they had those battles. So when you tell me that this is a false association, one more time, I'm needing more clarification as to that, because this is an exact overlay of what's going on in regards to what I'm seeing here. And if I may, just as someone may say, let's say someone's like, no, you don't understand. I've seen myself that Samuel is divinely inspired, that Samuel is appointed by God to make this decision. And let's say that Samuel showed them some sort of sign to those who were with David in particular. This is why I'm coming This is why I'm coming with the scientific stance that I'm showing today, because as you stated, God will not leave us ignorant. Yes, I hear you clearly.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I don't disagree. If you're gonna go the science route, though, then I'm gonna want to see a Y haplogroup, right? If we go science, then I want to see that Davidic Y haplogroup, right? When we go into DNA, I want you to show me: is it EM180, EM36? Is it a J haplogroup? Is it a B haplogroup? A haplogroup? I want to know what your genetics are, and if you're going to go the scientific route, because as we said, the Most High will not lie. And then if we go further into the book of Daniel, we know that knowledge will increase. I'm not against the use of science, but I want you to show me this, because once again, and then I'll wrap up here. And I was going to point out, notice, they're very quiet on your stance. In the middle of mine, kind of popping up.
Hold on, I didn't get what you last mentioned, but if I may, brother, it is now you, in my opinion, who's making a false association. When you're telling me that you want to see Y haplogroups, you should know that these, especially you mentioning that you studied the Human Genome Project, that the only single person that they trace back Y chromosome lineage to is, quote, Y chromosomal Adam. They don't go back to, they can go back to an area, so that still wouldn't be showing you that I'm
Whoa. Time out, though. My point is this, though. Do you understand how Y haplogroups work? Meaning, I have the same Y haplogroup as my father. So my genetic marker, my Y haplogroup is EM180. My son has that same Y haplogroup marker. My father has that same Y haplogroup, right? Now, obviously, we know that these things do morph or change over time, right? But by and large, we would see a consistent argumentation of your bloodline if you're arguing the scientific route. And that's my only argument. If you're not going to take the scientific route and prove it scientifically, don't bring up science.
Wait, hold on, brother. There's different, and I know you got to go soon. Excuse me. I'll try to be as brief as possible. And I know that this is obviously what we will be debating in essence, but there's different avenues of science which prove exactly what I'm stating, which is, for example, if you keep tracing back your haplogroup, for example, you're going to go back to an area. So let's say, for example, hold on, if I just may, let's say, for example, you were of the tribe of, quote, Benjamin, or if you were pick whichever one you want. Now, literally, just because you're able to trace yourself back to that area, they still at that point wouldn't be able to tell if you were of the tribe of Benjamin, if you were of the tribe of Judah, if you were of the tribe of Ephraim. They still wouldn't be able to tell at that point. So when we mention the haplogroups, that is a false association still. But
I would humbly disagree, and this is why you probably should really study who me and my brothers are. So, for instance, as we start to get deeper and deeper into our conversations, we are looking at, like, the Limba tribe. We're looking at the Igbo tribe. We're looking at the Yoruba tribe. All of these different tribes in Africa who have different lineages and different people who are saying, well, we've been in this place for 3,000 years. We have an oral history. We have our written history, and we know that we're of the line of Judah, or we're of the line of Gad, or we're of the line of this. I can simply then go and test and line myself up with different lineages, right, of different haplogroups, and now make a connection that way, and start to decide or determine which tribe I come from, or at least narrow it down to 2 or 3, right? So what I'm saying is, you hear me out, bro. You hear me out. So what I'm saying is, I'm not telling you not to use science. If you want to use science, I'm telling you, be prepared to argue that in the scientific argument. You don't just get to pop up and say, because DNA carries these different traits, these different things, that then now, oh, I'm the Davidic Messiah, because now I need to see your genome. I need to see how it lays out for you specifically. I need to know what are your specific measurements? For instance, if I'm telling you that the Messiah is going to come, he's going to look like this, he's going to have a size 13 shoe, he's going to have dreadlocks, he's going to have green eyes, or whatever we're saying, and then you pull up and you got a size 9 shoe, you bald head, and your eyes are blue, you're not the Messiah. That's the point that I'm making.
Okay, I got you. But the thing is still, notice how, remember, you stated in specifically, how do we know that you are the Messiah? I mentioned earlier that there's one of you. There can't be two of you. There can't be three of you. And the thing is, going back to a specific tribe, even if tracing in that way can be traced back to the line of Judah, it still wouldn't be proving that you are the exact line of David. And excuse me, the reason why
you shouldn't make the claim. That's what I'm saying. You're saying you're the Davidic Messiah to come.
Correct.
You shouldn't make the claim.
Just hear me out, brother. What I'm stating is that, one more time, going back to Samuel, that in essence, what was it that Samuel was able to show? That it was David, and specifically, let alone when we see that he has brothers there. That, for example, let's say there was somebody who you were talking to right now that wasn't me, that was a son of one of David's brothers. And let's say you're able to trace yourself back genetically right there to Jesse's very house. Even if you were tracing yourself back to Jesse's house, that still wouldn't mean that you were the son of David. So what I am saying, brother, excuse me, is just like at that moment, Samuel had whatever God-given alliances there were to show that, hey, this is the one. The things that I am showing scientifically are doing the exact same. I have brothers myself here. Why someone could say easily, hey, why is it you and not one of your brothers then? Someone could say that same thing. But the things that literally I'm saying that I'm doing, even at this very second, that I'm doing scientifically, that's observable, testable, repeatable, you have to understand this, brother. Excuse me.
Real quick question, who's your Samuel? Who's your prophet that told you these things?
No,
you have a Samuel?
That's exactly.
You keep bringing up Samuel. The reason Samuel is important is because Samuel was the one that made these announcements, and it's because he was a prophet. Whether you agree with it or think it is or whatever, at that point in time, he was a prophet, or the leader of the prophetic school, right? So my question is, where is your Samuel then? And so this is what I'm telling you, it becomes a false equivalency when you keep making certain connections, because then I need to know who announced you as the lineage of these people. Like, where is your prophet, or where is your Samuel? Where is the person who picked you out among your brothers?
Okay, now hold on. What I'm going to do specifically, you just said, where is your Samuel? This is why I mentioned, for example, Yitzhak. And not only Yitzhak, but different scientists, and excuse me, I'll clear this up in a moment. Not only Yitzhak, but this is why I mentioned who fulfills the outlines that he's been looking for, and those of his nature. Who fulfills these descriptions, the identification that they're looking for? Earlier, just a moment ago, you were mentioning physical attributes. And if they said, hey, if you have when it says that you will have a 13 shoe, and you show up and you don't have that, then obviously it's not you. So what I'm stating is, just like he mentioned, when the Mashiachk comes, and you'll see clear. I'm not going to just rattle them all out here, but you'll see clear in the video that I mentioned. I'm going to send you over, that it states that we are looking for this, and then I show proof that not only is this happening, but indeed it is happening with me. The reason that I know that it is because it's happening. There was no way I just came upon all this evidence individually or independently, and then just decided to try to wrap them up together, and then they just happen to match up with everything that these angels are saying. That would be ridiculous.
So Yitzhak, would you say his name is Yitzhak Greenberg or Ginsburg? What's his name?
His name is Ginsburg specifically, but there are other angels as well. Like, for example,
hold on, before we go any further, before we go too deep into that, just so I'm clear, they have specifically said it was you, or they gave you a profile and you lined yourself up with that profile?
I fit the profile. That's what I was mentioning earlier as well.
So, but they never said it was you. You're just saying you're self-proclaiming yourself to fit the profile.
I'll be honest with you, to be very clear on that, and that's that. Again, I wouldn't even have had to if what they were saying was written out in the book. We would be talking about the same exact thing.
So I'm gonna turn up the heat on you a little bit and show you how it would go in the debate. Brother, you can't answer this question truthfully, evidently. I just want to know first, before you get to explaining, yes or no, did he say that you fit it, or did you look at his profile, his Messiah profile, and decide that you fit it? Did he say it, or did you look at it and decide that you fit it?
Hold on one moment. You're asking me, did he say that I am the Messiah yet?
Yes, because you keep referencing him as the authoritative figure. So did he say it, or did you see what he put out there and then decided that you fit that profile?
Oh, of course. No, and hold on one moment.
Of course, what do you mean? You saw it and you decided it?
I'll clarify. No, it wasn't just decided it. This is what I'm meaning. Let me try to clear up what maybe the disconnect here. This is what I'm meaning. You've heard of people such as David Koresh, or from what I know of on YouTube, there's like 3-4 people claiming they're the Messiah, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the reason why they do that, of course, is because they never heard Yitzhak. None of these, David didn't hear of Yitzhak. None of these angels heard of Yitzhak. They saw. Hold on one moment.
You know, I love you. I love you.
No, wait, brother. Just hear me out. Just hear me out. What I'm meaning.
Okay.
The reason why they came to that conclusion, of course, is because they read out a profile in the book that they started to associate themselves with. Now, hold on one moment. Me and Solar talked about this in the very first interview that we had. And that is because, again, even when, I'm trying not to go too deep in a different direction. This is why I made the correlation between what we see with our very genetic code and even the original Hebrew script. Of course, different people are going to see themselves in different points in times within the book. There are different, you're going to work right now. I don't know if there's someone in your workplace who feels like they were Saul, who feels like they were in some position of power, and now here comes you as a David, and now they feel threatened, and hold on, this kid does this better than me, or he's computer literate in this way, or
So you know that's the story of my life, and I still don't run up and say that I'm the promised Messiah to come.
This is
you understand how many people in this league and all of the stuff that I make uncomfortable?
Hold on. This is what I'm meaning. It's not just you. It's just about everyone else who reads it. That was literally what I just said. So this, again, as me and Solar were speaking, this is why others, they saw themselves and they're like, oh, this is me. Now there's one thing associating yourself in that way. As I said before, as we go down the line of who fits these descriptions, and check off, yes, this fits, then move on to the next category. Yes, this fits. Of course, we start getting people who fall by the wayside that, hey, okay, didn't match that. That's not it. Even if they matched, let's say, reasons 1, 2, and 3, if they don't have 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., then it's not them, of course. Now, one more time, this is why I'm bringing up what in specific they stated that they are looking for, which there is no one else. And the thing, I think that a part of this disconnect is that you haven't seen the timestamp that I'm saying, hey, look at this first, and then tell me if this is sufficient for you to want to debate. Because one more time, the detail in what you are asking me is in what I'm wanting to show you, not just come out with. Because the thing is that what I'm about to show you, there is no other claiming it. All the people that you mentioned that can say that they can stand up and say, hey, I'm this. None of them have any iota of what it is that I'm about to show you, which is my equivalent of who you stated, hey, Samuel was the head of this priesthood. These angels that are putting this forward scientifically, that this is where we're at now in time. They are the head of what they are doing. Literally, just like one can say that Samuel was. So in particularly, did Yitzhak say that I'm this or that? I've never had a conversation yet with Yitzhak. I stated from the beginning of our conversation that what he said he is looking for, I do fit the description of. And the thing is, in our debate, you will also have to prove that I don't. when I come forward with the
what I'm gonna prove is I don't trust his or your criteria, and that's the other thing, right? And so, just so you know, I'll probably bring 3 or 4, maybe 5 different arguments against this. And one of them is you don't fit the biblical narrative of what it should be, right? Number 2, we don't.
Tell me what that is.
I'll tell you in the debate, not because I don't want to be forthcoming. Like I'll even lay it out in my premise, but it's very extensive, and so I want to give you the Bible verses so you can know, because I would love to know everything that, what's his name? Is he a rabbi? Rabbi Isaac Ginsburg? Is he a Morey? What is his position?
No problem. I just want to clarify that
you have a hard time answering questions, Randy. I can tell you were a counterpuncher as a boxer, huh?
But the thing is this, and that's it. You just mentioned that, hey, I can't just lay it out right now because it's too extensive. And then when I explain to you the exact same thing, you're telling me it's not sufficient during our phone call. That's
different. I'm going to lay it out in the debate. Number 1.
Okay. And here I'm telling you, I'm about to send you a timestamp.
Hold on. Number 2, though, the problem is you're giving me a Messiah profile based on a man, based on what some man has said. I'm going to give you a Messianic or Messianic profile based upon the Bible, right? And we cannot sit here and stand on man's doctrine, right? We cannot. We have to stand on what the Scriptures teach us.
Okay.
So that's my biggest issue.
So when you mentioned earlier, and perhaps now I can get a closer understanding of what it is that you believe. When you say messianic scripture, what you're talking about, what books are you talking about?
All of them. So especially in the prophets, right? So when we deal with the prophets, and in maybe even in the book of Revelation, right?
Excuse me, I think you just answered my question, but when you say all of them, there are some people that they hold that all of them is Genesis to Malachi. So when you say all of them, what are you meaning?
Yeah, so I'll deal with all the 66. I'll probably deal more with, just so you can understand, more with an Ethiopian understanding of the canon, right? And that's a very, I hate this term, right? Because I don't agree with the Nicene canon and any of these things, right? But I would lean more towards a Ethiopian style canon, right? Something that's going to give us the Apocrypha plus the Tanakh plus the New Testament scriptures, and then also we can deal with Jubilees, Enoch. I'll even deal with some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, specifically probably like the Melchizedek scroll. I haven't crafted the argument completely yet. I've never known anybody other than Yaju Judah that was really trying to do this. So, and I really wasn't interested in argument, but I think you have a very coherent argument. I just disagree with it.
Hold on, brother. If I may, now not to interrupt you, but I just don't want to lose a point here. You mentioned, of course, the conflictions with what happened after the Council of Nicaea, but then you're also telling me in the same breath that you'll be using New Testament doctrine, which of course blossomed from that very Council of the Nicaea. So when you're
great, can I expound on that real quick?
And not only that, but
my attestation is not that the scriptures are correct; it's that they're incomplete. Meaning, we shouldn't only have, Matthew through Revelation, right? We should also have the Apocrypha, because the Apocrypha gives us a clear-cut understanding about the codified history of these people in between the Greek persecution and the Roman, or the Persian persecution and the Roman persecution, specifically what happens during the time of the Greeks, right? So I'm not sitting here saying that the Nicene Council changed the books. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's what you're saying, and we could argue about that later, right? If you make that point, then you have to prove that point. And simply saying you don't like the name. Hold on, let me finish, brother.
Yeah, go ahead.
Simply saying that you don't like the name that's added, which is, simply because you don't like the name that's added in the genealogy of Luke, is not good enough, right? So
whoa! Now, hold on. Now I have.
Bro, I've let you go for a long time. And so now when I start punching back, we see that some of this decorum goes out the window. So just let me finish real quick, because I'll let you talk at nauseam, right? So,
as I have you still.
I really haven't. You clearly dominated the level of talk.
No, brother, you just complimented me on being gracious in return. Don't go there, but go ahead.
Oh, you are gracious. I'm not saying that. And when I'm saying gracious, I'm speaking of your spirit. But you definitely, and you've even apologized because you have talked a lot. But I love it because you're expounding upon your doctrine. But the point that I'm just making is this. When it comes to that debate night, you're going to have to answer these questions straight up. What I notice happens is you try to answer and then you go into an oracle type rant, right? Which is great when it comes to feeding someone's soul. But it does not work out when I'm asking you to prove that you are that messianic figure. And so if you want to know the profiles I'm going to be pulling is from various scriptures in different parts of the Bible. The Tanakh, the Apocrypha, as well as the New Testament, right? And
hold
some
on.
of the dead.
That's where we have a problem. This is where we have a problem. And excuse me, you confused a rant with me trying to do my best with letting you know exactly what it is that my position is. So excuse me, and I made sure to make that clear earlier as well. But I want to say, for example, if someone tells me that when they look at the book of Luke and it doesn't match Genesis, it doesn't match Chronicles, to just say, oh, that's okay, that's an issue.
Oh, no, I didn't say it was okay. I disagree with your interpretation of what it would say, and I also disagree with what your interpretation of whose lineage it is and by which way we get to it.
Okay,
so that's why I said if you wanted to debate the lineages later, we can, right? But in the debate, I'll show you why I think that is not Messiah Yeshua's lineage by way of Joseph. That's the problem.
One moment, and definitely, I'd like to, if you have the time, I'd like to hear more about that in a moment. But I was going to ask that this is what the disconnect was when I was speaking with Battle Axe and Akmalak and those angels there, that they themselves have what Chris is used to, a very Romanized view of things that are going on. So the reason why I'm asking you, where are these messianic prophecies, where's this information coming from that you are asking or trying to decide if I indeed match or not? I need to first make sure that what you are trying to identify me by is indeed legitimate. Because if you're asking me to fit a Roman fairy tale, not only, of course, do I not fit that, but of course you will never see that ever, because it is indeed a Roman fairy tale. So
I don't believe in the ghost army coming back. I don't want you to feel like I'm going to show up and say, oh, you got to show up with an army. And no, right? Like, that's why I tell you, everything that I'm going to do, any belief that I have that comes from the New Testament is filtered through the Torah. That's first off. All right? It starts in the Torah, then continues all the way through the Tanakh. Okay? So I'm never going to hold you to Roman Catholicized doctrine. I'm not a Roman Catholic. I'm not even classified technically as a Sunday believer Christian type. I'm not even one of these Hebrew Israelite Christians. These Hebrew Christian elites who still hold on to a lot of this hocus pocus. Okay, so we're not worried about that. But for instance, if you want the answer, right? So for instance, you still believe that certain parts of the book of Revelation is true, right? So I would go to some of those parts.
Hold on, I just feel.
Wow. Well, no, I just think if you want these answers, you kind of got to listen.
No, but I wanted to clarify a misunderstanding here. I pointed out where you can clearly see where the book of Revelation got the sword of the mouth. I didn't say anything else about the book of Revelation, but keep going.
So it's okay for you to use certain parts of it and then say you don't like other parts of it, correct?
I was highlighting where it came from. I didn't use it.
Well, if you highlight it, you use it. And so the issue that I have is if you don't deal with the Roman Catholicized book at all in its entirety or whatever, don't bring up any of it. Right? Don't bring up any of it. Don't use any of it in the debate. Right? Because if you do, then what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Excellent. But this is why I'm also wanting to make sure that these quotes, I know you just mentioned from the Torah through the Tanakh, but then you also mentioned the New Testament. This is why I'm trying to make sure that we show up to this debate and and if you start pulling out scriptures which are clearly that have been Paulinized, to say the least. Again, for example, let me just try. Maybe this will make it clear. For example, Paul states that he saw, quote, Jesus in the spirit, never in flesh, or in the spirit. And then
it has nothing to do with the claim that I'm making.
Hold on. Good. That's what I'm trying to clarify, because then you have in essence descriptions of what is to come from Paulinized, quote, church fathers. So I'm trying to make sure that if you are trying to see if I fit the description of what these myth pushers ultimately did, that's what I'm trying to clarify. Where?
So you mean when you say church fathers, you mean like Ignatius and all of these guys?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I don't like. Once again, brother, I don't deal with them. If anything, I lean more towards. If anything, I would lean closer to the Ebionite way of looking at it than anything else. So you can understand that, right? I would be as close as you can come to an Ebionite, with the exception of I do hold to the Torah understanding that Paul is teaching, right? All of the rest of the mystical teachings, I believe, have been miscategorized by the Roman Catholic Church, right? And so that's the problem. Now we move into private interpretation of the bishops and the cardinals and the Saint Ignatius and the Polycarps. I disrespect and I disregard any of that, right?
Okay.
So I'm not gonna run you into the teachings of Polycarp. I'm not gonna run you into Ignatius' teachings. This is not Saint Ignatius' argument, right? The argument is that there is one to come that has a certain role to fill after the death. I don't even do the death, burial, and resurrection, and all that, right? But after the coming of Messiah Yeshua. One more final question: do you do agree that Messiah Yeshua was at least a prophesied Messiah to come, or do you disagree with that?
That's what I've been trying to explain, brother. That, for example, since David, there's been a line of Christ.
That's why I said A, not B. A, prophesied Messiah to come. Do you believe that Christ was A? So, like, if we're saying like the Daniel 9 prophecy, does he fit that bill?
No, not in that.
So, got you. So you do not agree that Messiah Yeshua was a Messiah at all?
It's when you say Yeshua, excuse me, please excuse me, because obviously here we're basically talking about one of the obviously the biggest questions in the world, so to speak, outside of, hey, did God create their God itself? And of course, this goes along to further proving, as was placed in my last debate. But for example, just to be clear, you know who Bar Kokhba, even if you don't.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Bar Kokhba revolt. I'm with you.
Excellent. Now, there are those that hold that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. Now, the thing is, excellent, there are those that hold that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah to come. And the thing was, of course, as we know, Bar Kokhba ended up passing away in these wars. Now, it did not mean that Bar Kokhba didn't have a son, which happened to be the line of David. This nobody knows. There's no way to prove that, because they stated, hey, is Bar Kokhba the Messiah? Now, it did not mean that Bar Kokhba could not have been the line of David, as many held that he was. But the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of these messianic prophecies, you're only able to verify them after they happen. This is why you have so many angels that hold that when the Mashiachk comes, he's going to rebuild the temple. And that's how I will know the Mashiachk comes. Not this foreshadowing of this, or this guy kind of looks like that. It'll be when this temple is completed. So this is why...
So you know, our messianic profile is done different, right? And if you need to see my profile before you debate me, then I'll put that together. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm getting at, brother. To make sure that
you're afraid. So you're afraid to stand on your square until you see my messianic profile. I just want to make that clear.
No, this is why I stated I'm going to send you over what I. No. Hold on. Go back to what I said already. I don't need to do it. Listen very clearly. Listen very clearly to what I've already said. I've already said, yes, I accept your debate. And then I said that I'm going to send you over.
But you also just said, hold on. Debate until you see my messianic profile. That's what you
No, hold on. I literally said just moments ago, if we show up to this debate and you're pulling out Roman fairy tale mixed out in the bread.
You're gonna call me a name? I'm good with that.
No, I didn't say that. I said if we show up to this debate and you're pulling out Roman fairy tale. I didn't call you a Roman or a fairy tale, brother.
I mean, okay, you call my doctrine a name. All right, look, bro, I'm good with all of that, right? What I'm saying is this. Our messianic profile tends to differ, especially if you're telling me that I need to go listen to Yitzhak Ginsburg to understand the profile. Now I need to know his authority in the entire nation of Israel, and now we start to move into all of the different infighting that's going on in the nation. So then, what gives him the authority, right? So I don't want to discredit him, but I'm clearly going to do that if that's what you're standing on.
Hold on. There's two things that just to clarify. Do any of the messianic holdings, do any of the messianic descriptions, in essence, that you want to put forward to see if I fit them or not, are any of them in the New Testament?
Yeah, there'll probably be a couple. Yeah.
Okay. Now, those New Testament books, brother, is there any way you can prove that the Ebionites themselves held to those doctrines and it wasn't the church fathers that originated them?
Yeah, it would depend on different parts, but yes, definitely.
Okay. So as long as...
Second question in return. Have you done extensive study into the New Testament, or are you just regurgitating what you've heard?
Well, you could say that basically about anybody who...
Well, no, because I think you've done extensive study into certain things. But now when we're getting to the New Testament, right, you almost sound like a Torah only, right? Which I guess maybe that's what we're dealing with, right? Would you consider yourself a Torah or Tanakh only believer?
Well, that's the thing. The Torah and Tanakh, they don't hold to the books that are in the Dead Sea Scroll, such as the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, which I most certainly do. So, but I think
would you consider yourself Jewish?
Jewish? Well, you remember Jew means of the tribe of Judah.
Do you consider yourself a Jew?
Okay, just to clarify, and I am answering your question, so I'm not, just so you understand, just because it may be a little longer than what you expected. This is why I brought up that Adam in acronym form means from Adam to David, which is the tribe of Judah, to Mashiachk.
So making sure, I know this, but making sure that I can get the straight answer, so then that means you would have to consider yourself a Jew.
The tribe of Judah. But again, once more, the term Hebrew, for example, comes from a great-grandson of Shem named Eber.
Bro, we don't have to go down this Genesis 15 or Genesis.
I'm just being very clear, because don't forget, when you say, are you a Jew? You would also still have to say that you're an Israelite, because Judah is from Israel. So I'm just being clear that this originates with and from Adam. But one more time, I would have to see proof as well, just so you understand and you're prepared, that the New Testament parts that you want me to address, that indeed the Ebionites upheld them. And now the thing is this, brother.
That's the difference, though. The Ebionites are not the authoritative. They're not the authority to it.
So who is?
Just because the scriptures are.
Hold on. But whom stand that the scriptures are? Because there are fights in
the scriptures themselves. So the scriptures tell us that the prophets have laid out a role for us to follow, right? And then we have an understanding of what happened in the first century AD, right? Which I get you deny. So, but we're not going to make the debate simply about that. So if you're afraid for me to use the New Testament because you can't fight it, then fine. But if you want to fight it and say you disagree with the New Testament, you have that right? But it's still not going to change all the other evidence. You can't argue against the Apocrypha. You can't argue against the Tanakh. You're not going to be able to argue against. We both agree with the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? So there will be certain things that I bring up, and we'll either just disagree with it, right, or one of us will get proven wrong. But you can't tell me how to craft my argument. You can just say on debate night, I disagree with this argument, and here's why.
Oh no, that's no problem. I was just like you stated that. Hey, be prepared that when this happened, this is how I'm going to react. I'm just basically giving you the same heads up that, as I said earlier, and you mistook it as me somehow ad hominem you, and then mentioning your doctrine, when remember, you just mentioned yourself that there were prophets that wrote this. So it isn't your doctrine. I have to make sure that the prophets that you're referring to, they are actual prophets, because, again, when you speak of the New Testament, it's going to be very hard pressed for you to name a book that didn't come from Roman origins.
Excellent. I'm good with that.
Excellent. So what I'll do is,
I'm definitely good with that.
Just as I mentioned, brother, as soon as we hang up the phone here, I'll send you over the clips as to what I was speaking about in specifically, and then you and I can email back and forth in regards to time and date. And of course, we'll collaborate that with Solar, and we'll do it all together.
Man, that's great. Hey, don't confuse like the questioning and the pressing. I still think you're amazing, cat. Very humble spirit. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what part of the world you're in, but if we ever around each other, we can go catch something. You know what I'm saying? You're a real cool cat. So I appreciate the dialogue.
I appreciate that too, brother. If I may, I know we're if you feel comfortable. If not, don't worry about it. Where is it that you're at?
I'm in the West Coast. So I'm in Cali.
Okay, excellent. I'm currently in Florida myself. I was teasing with James a little bit when I was talking with Chris, because I could be wrong. Yeah, I'm right next to him. So I was laughing because there are these moments where some of these people started talking to him, and I wouldn't pull this on Chris. He's not. He's all good. But I was almost wanting to throw out there, like, Chris, I may be able to walk to where you're at.
Oh no! It must have turned into him trying to talk about him fight you and all of this.
Oh, it's all good. But no problem. I'll send this over to you, and then after you watch it, after you study it, of course, let me know where you're at then, and we'll go from there.
Okay, no problem. And then I'll craft a more specific profile so you can see where I'm coming from, so that way you get an understanding. I'm traveling around today. I'll be settled again tomorrow. So, look for it tomorrow. If not tomorrow, Saturday.
And I was going to ask as well that obviously, again, and excuse me if you took it in any way like that it wasn't crafting your argument on my part. It was qualifying it in regards to, if just like you mentioned, that if you disagree, you disagree, and then obviously someone would expect some reasons why someone disagrees. So this is why I was asking in specifically, like, hey, if you, after I email you, if you want to, if I'm not telling you how to debate, but if it's you who just like wants to, if you'd like me to like look into what you're wanting me to fit to address them in that way, of course you reply with what those books are and what those scriptures are, so that I can also go back and verify who wrote them, who are these prophets. If you're not, if you don't want to do that, and that was like a part of your, hey, now I'm coming with this is what I'm meaning. Like, I want to actually answer what you're putting forth. This is the reason why. I didn't want to just give you I Romans wrote that and that's it. Like, then that would just be after you put the work into putting it together.
No, we good. Like, and so, but you'll see when I craft everything. I think I articulate myself decently, right? So, I think my argument will be laid out very clear. It won't be sporadic. It won't be all over the place. It'll be clear cut and easy to understand. And we'll kind of go from there. And if you could kind of do me the same service at least, so I can understand, like, Yishak Greenberg and anyone else's understanding of this messianic profile, that would help. If not, I mean, I'm already ready to argue with. I can adjust on the fly, but it would make me. I think it makes the debate much better.
That's exactly what I was meaning as well. What you exactly said right there in, of course, reflection. But I wanted to mention as well, when you get this email from me, that's why I was stating before, in your response, let me know. That's why I stated, let me know if that's enough sufficiently for you to go off of to make this. Is is, of course, as comprehensive as possible. So when I send it over to you, whatever questions you have, including, hey, is there any more on this in particular or that in particular, write it over to me and I'll send it over to you. Again, if this is the truth, again, you're not getting anyone running here just like solid gold. The more you scratch in, the more you're going to find gold, not some other element. So again, I'm not just trying to surfacely skid by here. There's no such thing as that. Again,
hold on for a second, Landy. We'll tell you when to leave.
Brother,
we staying here for a while. Are you trying to get right back? I just need to make one stop before we leave. I'm almost done. Sorry, it's my business partner.
Angel, you owe me no apologies. I'm going to let you go right this second so you can actually focus on what you're doing. Of course, by the grace of God, arrive to where you're going, not only safely, but with all that you're intending to arrive with. And you'll have this email waiting for you, brother. And again, whatever questions you need, we'll continue to dialogue. We don't have to rush when this debate takes place. If it's in a week and a half or whatever it comes out to be, of course, it'll be as God allows it. Don't feel like we have to rush this, because ultimately, we're talking about all of history. We're talking about world history. I know it may not